Welcome back to the Eyewitness News Countdown. Tonight, we're digging deeper into a controversial bill in Florida. It has sparked national headlines and some national anger as well. It is now just an arch-conservative Republican governor's signature away from becoming law in Florida. Many are calling it the Don't Say Gay bill. And while it doesn't actually mention that phrase anywhere in the bill, it would in fact severely limit what educators can and cannot teach about sexual orientation and gender identity in some classrooms, specifically classrooms from kindergarten through third grade. The legislation prompted student walkouts in some schools in Florida. So could a law like this impact the health and well-being of young people, especially LGBTQ youth? Opponents say absolutely. Proponents say basically, we don't care. Let's dive into it. We welcome Professor Dr. Perry Halkitis. Is that right, Halkitis?
That's correct.
I'm so happy I got that right. Professor, thank you very much. You're the Dean of the Rutgers School of Public Health, and thank you for joining us. This is a very big deal to so many people on both sides of it. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me for this really important discussion. I think, first and foremost, it's important to note that the bill, basically what it does is it handcuffs schools and teachers from having conversations about sexual orientation and gender identity in grades K through 3, and then in other areas of the school too as children get older. Now, what this unfortunately does for people like myself who are gay, who struggle with being a young gay man as a child, is that it says to us that our lives, are not legitimate. They're lesser. They're not worth the conversation. And we have known for a very long time that the more we normalize the lives of LGBTQ people in our society, the healthier people are in terms of their mental health and ultimately their physical health. So this has potentially very damaging effects for not only the kids who are growing up in Florida, but for children around the country who are seeing this legislation that's basically telling them that they are not good enough.
Does it also have an effect on the kids who are not struggling with their sexual preference and their identity? Just, the people who are not gay, the people who are not thinking of becoming trans or whatever, all that, the people who are not part of this, does that affect them as well? Because it keeps their mind open to other people.
Exactly. I mean, we know from the way the brain works that the more you challenge the brain to think broadly about things, the more we challenge children to think widely about things, the better their health is, the better their cognitions is, the better their intelligence is. And so it does not only affect LGBTQ kids or kids who are, developing an identity that's either gay or lesbian or trans, but also those who are straight, because very much, they are part of a society where they're going to interact with other individuals who are not straight identified. And this non-normalization, this restriction in conversation about LGBTQ people has an effect on them, because quite frankly, if we can't talk about LGBTQ lives in classrooms, we are not going to talk about perhaps women's lives or Black people's lives. And these things are all so intricately related that it creates a society where potentially we're restricting the conversation to a small set of the population that is not representative for the plurality of all of us who live in this country.
And let me just say, full disclosure, I am an ally because my oldest child, she'll be 30 this summer, came out of the closet when she was in high school. And I think that she had two parents who were, incredibly accepting of all that and proud of her, helped her a lot, because I know a lot of my friends my age and even younger, hard to imagine there's not a lot of people younger than me, but their lives growing up, being inside the closet had a huge impact on their psyche and their confidence and everything else. And my youngest daughter, who's 12 in the 7th grade, has been studying these things since she was really, really young in school. The school's been open to that. She is so open-minded about people's identities and everything else, and is the one lecturing me about calling people they instead of she or him. And she's very on top of this. And so you really see the benefits.
There's an amazing anecdote, and you're amazing, loving parents. And I always come back to this story when I think about my own development as a gay man, and my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, and his daughter, who's my niece, who I'm very close with. Her name is Sophia. My brother, and she came over to my house, and Sophia, who was maybe 5 or 6 at the time, noticed that I was with my partner at the time and said to my brother, Uncle Perry and whoever it was, sleep in the same bed. And my brother's response to that was, yes, they do. And that normalization, just like your normalization with your daughter, makes you feel like you have a place in the world, that you are not abnormal, that you are not sick. And this law in Florida and these laws in Texas are doing nothing but pathologizing LGBTQ people, and we have to fight them.
I have several other things to talk to you about. I want to talk as well about what's going on in Ukraine, but really quickly, where's my note here? Here it is. The American Academy of Pediatrics next month is coming out with a book, and it says traditional puberty education, splitting kids up according to gender, often does not include all kids' experience of puberty, fostering shame and secrecy, alienating kids who may be gender diverse, and leaving kids with questions about how puberty affects their friends and classmates. This is exactly what you're talking about. Before you answer, I got a note also tonight from CPAC, the American Conservative Union, saying, putting it in political terms, this is all about the socialist left trying to kick parents out of the education decisions. How do you respond to each of what these organizations are doing?
So to the first point, absolutely. We know very clearly that gender is not a binary. It is on a continuum. We all have feminine and masculine, identities, and people are, identify as male or female or non-binary. And so it's a whole spectrum. So that is completely right. And for individuals who are, in various places along the spectrum, being forced into a binary is really problematic. I mean, I'll say, Bill, that one of the greatest moments in my life also was when I was in high school, as struggling, with my identity as a gay man. One of my teachers, my health ed teacher, brought in 3 gay men who talked to us. And I thought, wait, my life is not that abnormal. Now, to the second point, this is not a leftist agenda by any means. This is a society in which we are trying to encourage everyone to live to be their authentic selves, to live their full identities as in the lives of who they are, and to flourish in those identities. Nobody is forcing anybody to be gay or lesbian. We are born this way, as Lady Gaga told us. And so we need to provide opportunities for people to live their full authentic lives.
I appreciate that. I do have one question, as long as you're on with us, because as a parent, I worry about this next generation and how all this is affecting, from 9/11, growing up with 9/11 for kids, to going through the pandemic, and now the world turned upside down with talk of a nuclear World War III kind of confrontation in Ukraine with Russia and the U.S. and NATO. How does this affect children? And we could talk for an hour, but if you can get it in a minute, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I mean, what we have to remember about children is that even though they're not necessarily talking about something, they're absorbing. They're absorbing everything. 9/11, the events of 9/11, the events of this war. And so what I say to parents who have young children or adolescent children is like, have conversations, create a space for your children to talk about these things. Acknowledge that they might be feeling something. They may not be willing to talk about it right away, but at some point they will. And by, legitimizing their feelings, you're making a safe space for them to be able to manage their emotions. It's a scary, scary, scary time for all of us living in the world, and especially for young kids. What we can do best as parents, as adults, is make our children feel safe, make them feel loved, and give them the space to share their thoughts and their feelings.
Profound advice, and I really appreciate it. Professor Perry Halkitis of Rutgers, you really gave some great ideas and help for a lot of parents who are struggling with this question tonight. There's no question. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.